Wog is a slang word in the idiom of Australian English and British English, usually employed as an ethnic or racial slur and considered derogatory and offensive. In British English, wog is an offensive racial slur usually applied to Middle Eastern and South Asian peoples. In Australian English, wog is a term for people with Mediterranean features and is usually applied to people from Southern Europe either as a term of friendship, in jest, or as a racial slur. Origin. The origin of the term is unclear. It was first noted by lexicographer F. C. Bowen in 1929, in his C. Slang, a dictionary of the Old to Mercer unregistered trademark expressions and epithets, where he defines coonwogs as lower-class Baboo shipping clerks on the Indian coast. Many dictionaries say wog derives from the gollywog, a blackface minstrel doll character from a children's book published in 1895, or from pollywog, a maritime term for someone who has not crossed the equator. Suggestions that the word is an acronym for wily Oriental gentleman, working on government service, or similar, are examples of false etymology. In Australia, the term wog refers to residents of Mediterranean ethnicity or appearance. The slur became widely diffused with an increase in immigration from southern Europe, mainly Italy and Greece, after the Second World War. These new arrivals were perceived by the majority population as contrasting with the larger Anglo-Australian culture. The term expanded to include not just Southern European Mediterraneans but Mediterranean peoples in general, including Middle Eastern immigrants. Use in British English, wog in the UK is usually regarded as a racially offensive slang word referring to a dark-skinned or olive-skinned person from Africa or Asia and, therefore, it is not generally used. It is used generally to refer to peoples of the East Indies and India, as well as immigrants from the Middle East and Mediterranean. Most dictionaries describe the word as derogatory or offensive. The saying "the wogs begin at Calais" appears to date from the First World War, but was popularised by George Whig, Labour MP for Dudley, in 1949 when in a parliamentary debate concerning the Burmese, Whig shouted at the Conservative benches, "The honourable gentleman and his friends think they are all wogs." Indeed, the Right Honourable Member for Woodford, that is Winston Churchill, thinks that the wogs begin at Calais. Use in Australian English, as with other slang and prima facie profanity used in contemporary Australian English, the term wog may be employed either aggressively or affectionately within differing context. Wog is used particularly against Mediterranean and Middle Eastern immigrants in places in Australia, mainly Sydney and Melbourne. These cover those of Southern European or Southeastern European, Middle Eastern or Levantine, North African, Turkish, and Caucasus heritage. In the media, more recently European-Australian performing artists have taken ownership of the term wog, diffusing its original pejorative nature. The popular 1980s stage show Wogs Out of Work created by Nick Giannopoulos and Simon Palomas was an early example. The production was followed on television with Acropolis Now, starring Giannopoulos, Palomas, George Caffinellaris and Mary Costas, and films The Wog Boy and Wog Boy 2, Kings of Mykonos and parodies such as those of Santo Soloro, Eric Bana, Vince Colosimo, Nick Giannopoulos, Frank Lotito, Mary Costas and SBS Television's Offbeat Pizza TV series have continued this change in Australian cultural history, with some even classifying a genre of wogsploitation of pop culture products being created by and for a proudly wog market. Recent works of the genre have been used by Australians of non-English speaking backgrounds to assert ethnic identity, rather than succumb to ethnic stereotype. Upon the release of Wog Boy 2, Giannopoulos discussed the contemporary use of the term wog in the Australian context. "I think by diffusing the word wog we've shown our maturity and our great ability to adapt and just laugh things off, you know. When I first came to Greece and I started trying to explain to them why we got called wog, they'd get really angry about it, you know. They were, why they say this about the Greek people? You know? But then when they see what we've done with euro, and this is the twist euro that we've turned it into a term of endearment, they actually really get into that." Thus, in contemporary Australia, the term wog may, in certain contexts, be viewed as a nickname rather than a pejorative term akin to the nicknames ascribed within Australian English to other historically significant cultural groupings such as the English, the Americans and New Zealanders. Used in Canada, in Canadian military slang used by combat arms units, it is a derogatory term for any rear echelon personnel and those who are not a member of the combat arms. Scientology, the word WOG is used by Scientologists to refer to non-Scientologists. In her 2013 account of growing up in Scientology, Jenna Miscavige writes, "We had been led to believe the outside world was filled with ignorant people whom we called WOGs, short for well and orderly gentlemen. From what we were taught, WOGs were completely unenlightened. After we'd been trained in auditing and Scientology, it would be our job to clear them. WOGs were to be avoided because they were unaware of what was really going on, and their unawareness was reflected in their shallow priorities. WOGs like to ask a lot of questions. We were led to believe that they would find our lifestyle alarming, so we had to be careful that, when speaking to them, we spoke in terms they could understand." From a 2004 Church of Scientology magazine, "I arrived at St. Hill shy, introverted and somewhat out of valence. I had been working at a WOG job, and I knew my priorities had to change." Scientology's founder L. Ron Hubbard defined WOG as a common, everyday garden variety humanoid. He is a body. He doesn't know he's there, etc. He isn't there as a spirit at all. He is not operating as a thetan. L. Ron Hubbard employed the term in his lectures and writings. Since WOG is not in general use in American English, Hubbard may have picked it up during his period of service as a U.S. naval officer during World War II or in England, where he lived from 1953 to 1966. See also, List of ethnic slurs, references. External links, essays looking at the origins of the word and its possible relationship with Gollywog.